Amen. The last 2 weeks, we've been talking a little bit about how to simplify our time, to simplify our stuff. And today, I'm going to wrap that all up with simplifying our lives. Have you ever been physically exhausted? I mean, really tired? So tired that you didn't even want to move? You know, what do? We rest. Sometimes we train to build up our stamina, to go longer without getting so exhausted. You know, when runners run, they can't automatically go out and do a marathon, right? They have to build up to that 26.2 miles. Have you ever been mentally exhausted? I mean, mentally exhausted. To the point where it even gives you a headache. Well, recently somebody told me, actually it was a few years ago, somebody told me that they thought that I did a really good presentation on a project. They said they liked the way that you listened. I liked your advice. How do you suppose that made me feel? On the other hand, if the person would have said, your presentation was interesting, but you forgot to add this, or I didn't understand anything that you said, or I wish you would just listen and not talk so much, how do you suppose that would make me feel? You know, remember that time when the toll workers were at the toll booths? You know, many years ago, we didn't have the iPass. You went through, and either if you had the 35 cents to put in the little basket, you had to go through the lane where there was actually a worker there. It was a very monotonous job. You know, the people that staffed those little booths on the tollway that would take your toll, if you didn't have exact change for the toll, weren't they some of the most lifeless people you ever saw? I mean, thousands of cars would pull up. They would just take the bills from you and give you the change. No words, no smiles, just that blank stare. I got this from my dad. I decided many years ago, watching my dad do this, before the iPass came into being, that when I would go through a toll booth, even if I had the exact change, I would try to get a smile out of them. I would compliment them. I'd ask them to make a positive comment to the clerks or the checkers at a grocery store or other places of business, to tell them, thank you for your service, thank you for what you do. You know, those people at the grocery store, they scan purchases of hundreds of faceless shoppers every day. And I'm happy to say that many stores are going back to more cashiers as opposed to those self-checkout lines. I just wonder why we didn't get a discount by scanning our own groceries. I decided when I pay for our groceries that I would make a conscious effort to ask how their day was going, or say something like, I hope your day is going well. I mean, it's rewarding to see their faces light up. We come away with a feeling of well-being because in a small way we made a difference. You know, I used to do a training seminar many years ago, and hopefully I can remember this training seminar, but think about it as a bucket of water. You know, my bucket has water in it, right? And sometimes when I take a little bit out of my bucket and I give it to somebody else, what happens? It makes their day, right? Or somebody takes a little bit out of their bucket and gives it to me. How does that make me feel? Really good, right? You can run into problems because if you're the person giving all the time, what eventually happens to your bucket? Here, I'll speed this process up. It's empty, right? But you know, people, they begin to fill your bucket. Sometimes you have to get it out of here. You know what this is? God. In fact, the ladle sometimes isn't big enough to fill out my bucket. And then I give a little more here. What happens if I get some of this little bucket? It doesn't take much. That's why I only have a spoon. And then what happens? It doesn't take much of this. A bad compliment, a bad word of advice. Isn't that what happens when people? And then you need a lot more of this. And then you can begin to give this. And then this happens. And all of a sudden you got water back in your bucket. That's what goes on inside of us. You know, how do people get their dippers into our bucket? You know, when a person discounts what I'm saying, they dip into my bucket. For example, I might say, I really like those cookies I just made. They are the best cookies I have ever baked. And if another person says, those cookies taste like they've been burnt, they're dipping into my bucket. How about times when you're talking or saying something that you think is really important, but someone keeps interrupting? If someone persistently interrupts what I am saying, then they're dipping into my bucket. When someone continually finds ways to disagree with me, it's like I'm saying a comment like, yes, but, or that may be true. However, they're dipping into my bucket. If someone overrides, interrupts, or steals the conversation, they're dipping into someone else's bucket. And you know, when your bucket is empty, you behave differently than you would if your bucket is full, because you lose some of that excitement for living. You lose some of your joy. And when it happens to me, I become more concerned about my own feelings than the feelings of others. The joy of filling other people's buckets. I tell this story because many years ago, Karen and I, we went to Panera for lunch on the way home from church. And it wasn't all that busy, but when we got there and our food and found our booth to sit in, there was this family sitting at a corner table. And when they got up to leave, their small daughter got up and was trying to put something in the trash receptacle, which was right next to our booth. Karen and I both caught her eye, and she began to smile. You know, one of those shy smiles. She was really adorable. As she was leaving, she turned to us and says, "Goodbye, have a nice day." She turned to some other people eating their meal, and she says, "Goodbye, have a nice day." She taught me a lesson, a very valuable lesson, a lesson about filling other people's buckets. Obviously, she was so happy, felt so good about herself. Her objective was to make everybody else feel good in the process. She accomplished what most of us only try to accomplish. It seems she discovered the secret by helping others feel good. Her bucket must have been overflowing. So what does this all mean? I mean, it's quite evident that we are in charge of how we see ourselves and other people. We can be passive and wait till someone deliberately fills our bucket, or we could be proactive and go through about the business of filling other people's buckets, knowing it's the most efficient way to fill our own bucket. So I challenge you to make a commitment to fill as many buckets as you can, because your reward will be the joy seen on the faces of complete strangers. And by the way, you can't come away with a full bucket. Now, there's a story in Scripture. It comes from the Gospel of Luke. There's a lot of exhaustion going on. You see, it's near the end of Jesus' time, and they are in Jerusalem after the Last Supper. Things are ramping up to when Jesus is arrested, tried, beaten, and nailed to a cross. You know, when you see that movie, The Passion, that's one thing that immediately comes to mind is how exhausted Jesus must have been. You see, his bucket wasn't very full. In fact, it was almost dry. The disciples were tired and as well physically, but I think they were also getting mentally exhausted. You can see it in their actions. The story comes from Luke 22, verses 24 through 46, and it's about the disciples debating greatness. You see, an argument broke out among the disciples over which one of them would be regarded as the greatest. But Jesus said to them, "The king of the Gentiles rule over their subjects, and those in authority over them are called friends of the people. But that's not the way it will be with you. Instead, the greatest among you must become like a person of lower status, and a leader like a servant. So which one is greater, the one who is seated at the table or the one who serves at the table? Isn't it the one who is seated at the table? But I am among you as one who serves. You are the ones who have continued with me in my trials, and I confer royal power on you, just as my Father granted royal power to me. Thus you will eat and drink at my table in my kingdom, and you will sit on thrones overseeing the 12 tribes of Israel." And then Peter's bucket was, I don't know if it was half full or half empty sometimes. But Peter's denial predicted, "Simon, Simon, look, Satan has asserted the right to sift you all like wheat. However, I have prayed for you that your faith won't fail. When you have returned, strengthen your brothers and sisters." And Peter responded, "Lord, I'm ready to go with you, both to prison and to death." And Jesus replied, "I tell you, Peter, the rooster won't crow today before you have denied 3 times that you know me." And then Jesus does a call for preparedness. Jesus said to them, "When I sent you out, without a wallet, bag, or sandals, you didn't lack anything, did you? They said nothing. And then he said to them, but now whoever has a wallet must take it, and likewise a bag. And those who don't own a sword must sell their clothes and buy one. I tell you that the scripture must be fulfilled in relation to me, and he was counted among criminals. Indeed, what's written about me is nearing completion. And the disciples said to him, look, Lord, look, here are 2 swords. He replied, enough of that. And then Jesus, as exhausted as he probably was or will be, Jesus left and made his way to the Mount of Olives, as was his custom. And the disciples followed him. And when he arrived, he said to them, pray that you won't give in to temptation. He withdrew from them about a stone's throw, knelt down and prayed. He said, Father, if it is your will, take this cup of suffering away from me. However, not my will, but your will must be done. Then a heavenly angel appeared to him and strengthened him. He was in anguish, and he prayed even more earnestly. His sweat became like drops of blood falling on the ground. And when he got up from praying, he went to the disciples. He found them asleep, overcome by grief. He said to them, why are you sleeping? Get up and pray so that you won't give in to temptation. You see, when their buckets were empty, they got tired, exhausted. They got tempted. They doubted. They betrayed. They tore down one another. They built themselves up over others, and maybe trying to fill their own buckets, all the while dipping out of the others. See, Jesus knew they would be. Not only be physically exhausted, but also mentally exhausted. Who was filling their buckets? You suppose Jesus was really exhausted physically? I mean, how could he prepare for what was about what he was going to go through? How about mentally? How about spiritually? See, I think Jesus knew the secret to keep his bucket full. See, Jesus was the living water, the water to always keep his bucket full. Luke says that Jesus had a custom, something he did so much that it was part of his daily life, a habit. He knelt down and he prayed. He prayed so he wouldn't be tempted. Prayed because he was in anguish. He prayed even harder. Through his exhaustion, through his mental, his spiritual, his even physical exhaustion, he prayed. And then what does the story say? A heavenly angel appeared to him and strengthened him. See, Jesus knew the secret. Hebrews 12:3 says, think about the one who endured such opposition from sinners so that you won't be discouraged and you won't give up. See, Jesus knew the secret to filling the bucket. When your bucket is full, you won't get exhausted. Revelation says this, you have shown endurance and put up with a lot of my name for my name's sake, and you haven't gotten tired. Because when your bucket is full, even when you get physically exhausted, Paul in 2 Corinthians writes, so we aren't depressed. But even if our bodies are breaking down on the outside, the person that we are on the inside is becoming renewed every day. So this week, I've got some homework for you to do. All of you do this. Is to draw a bucket and put where your level is right now. Are you filled up? Are you half full, maybe a quarter full, or are you depleted? And be realistic. No one has to see this picture except you. But be realistic. Don't lie. Be honest. Just put a line on that bucket where you're at. And if your reaction right now to that assignment is, Jeff, you're crazy. I can't draw a bucket. I don't care how the bucket looks. Only you're going to see it. And if you bring the bucket to me, I'll try to fill it. I'll pray for you. I'll fill in what you need. Because I know you're depleted. I mean, that's kind of our knee-jerk reaction to this. You're on empty, but maybe not all of you are there yet. I would imagine we're all at various stages. And the second part of the homework assignment, and this may be kind of fun, but it's not going to be very simple. I want you to come up with a custom design that fits you. Just fits you. Not for someone else, but you. What are the things that replenish you? The people, the dynamics in your life, the activities, the engagements that you know predictably that will fill you back up. Because some of you have gotten pretty low in your buckets. So what are those things that work uniquely for you? And just to get you thinking about it, I'll give you some of mine that I've used when I get tired or living at a low level in my bucket. And maybe they can help you refill yours. The first one is this. Have you ever seen this picture? It's Adam and God. It's in the Sistine Chapel. You know, it's at the Vatican in Rome. It houses sculptures and art and fresco. The ceiling is adorned with famous art of Michelangelo. He spent years on primitive scaffolding, lying on his back, painting murals on the ceiling. And one of his most famous is this, the creation of Adam. It's Michelangelo's painting in the Sistine Chapel. That's heaven's touching a human being, the hand of heaven being God's and the other hand being Adam's. Now look at the picture and imagine the human being grabbing hold of God's hand and hanging on tightly. Just imagine that hand reaching out another 6 inches there and grabbing hold of God's hand. I mean, I like to look at that picture because the single most replenishing dynamic in my life is when I'm firmly hand in hand with God. When I feel in love, when His Holy Spirit is bubbling in my spirit, when I'm in conversation with Him throughout the day through prayer, I'm hearing His whispers and I'm trying to be present and responsive to Him. It's our relationship with God. And when I'm good with God, I know that sounds odd to you, but when I'm really connected with God, I'm way less concerned about other people's opinions about me. I'm way less concerned about others' agendas for my life. I'm like, hey, I know you've got an agenda for my life, but I just don't feel like I have to do it because I have my hand in hand with the one whose agenda I'm about. It might not be yours, but I'm good with Him. The second replenisher in my life, and a huge replenisher for me and also Karen's. I mean, it might not be true with everyone, but for me, it's my family, our kids. Here's a picture. This was last Christmas of us all acting goofy together. But that replenishes me, is being around our family, our kids. Psalm says it this way, no doubt about it, children are a gift from God. The fruit of the womb is a divine reward. We try to talk to them as much as possible, texting, phone call. A couple weeks ago, Rachel was down with her boyfriend Nathan. We're all going to be together for Thanksgiving. You think my bucket's going to be full? So find something. Find what replenishes you. The next real replenisher for me is satisfying work. You know, Ecclesiastic 5:18 says it this way. It is good and proper for a person to find satisfaction, replenishment in their labors. Because you know life is short. If your job sucks the life out of you week to week, year in and year out, I'd get on my knees every single day and say, God, I'm asking, I'm seeking, I'm knocking. I've either got to change my attitude about this job or change departments, change jobs or something. But if your job sucks from you, from full to depleted again and again and again and again, I don't know that you're in the right job. Because Ecclesiastes says you ought to be able to find some satisfying form of work, maybe not all for the money, but you right now, maybe not all the perks that you have right now, but maybe you need to find something else to do. Because sometimes when I see people that are constantly filled up, they enjoy what they're doing. The fourth thing, and that is the problem for me for a long time, I got so intense with the family, so intense with church, that I did no form of recreation whatsoever. Karen and I, many years, we did not take a vacation. And a very wise Christian mentor helped me to understand the heart of God for this. He helped me to understand what recreate or recreate in us means. He said, Jeff, God wants you to recreate energy and vitality in your inner person so that you have much more to offer others. So many years ago, Karen and I, we decided we were going to be very adamant and take a yearly vacation to get away, to take some intentional time off. You know, and I don't know what it's about you, if it's just awesome or reading, cooking, golfing, gardening, camping, stamp collecting. I don't care. You need to find something to recreate energy and vitality in your life. To me, that's what recreation means, to recreate in us. And you've got to install it as a regular stream of replenishment because you're going to need it someday. And it's going to be part that keeps you filled up. You know, in Matthew, Jesus must have been a boater. Because feeding the 5,000, when Jesus heard about John, he withdrew in a boat to a deserted place by himself. And when the crowds learned this, they followed him on foot from the cities. See, Jesus was a boater. You know, if you like to golf, golf. If you like to hunt, go hunting. If you like to fish, go fishing. But if you like to go out on the boat and get away from everyone, everything, go as Jesus did. And the last one I do is exercise. You know, some people have come up to me and they says, Jeff, you're no longer what you used to be. Because I made it very intentional that I was going to go out and walk at least 10,000 steps a day and kind of watch what I eat. Tell you what, my bucket is even fuller because I have more energy. I think clearer. They say that if you exercise an average, just the average of a day or average in a week or average a month, you can increase your energy by 20%. Throughout life, you're going to spend too long at the bottoms of our buckets. And when you're going to make terrible decisions that are going to be complicated or make a complicated direction in your life, you're going to be on a death spiral. And God wishes a different future for you. That's why, for me, the picture of the Sistine Chapel has the hand extended to you. God loves you, and He will take any hand that comes His way. And if you are, if you're repentant and are willing to put your hand into His, see, maybe today you need to apologize for being a dipper by sticking a hand in somebody else's bucket when it shouldn't have been there. So you need to say, God, I need you in my life. And He will become that replenishing force in your life instead of out of someone else's bucket. I mean, it's powerful when you're touched by God and what God can do to a human life. And maybe it's time to make some apologies, maybe to family members, so that they're on the replenishing side instead of, oh my gosh side. Often that can change with a phone call, or you can show up at a family member's door and go, our relationship has been draining. Can we turn this around so that our relationship with each other can be a replenishing relationship with each other? Can we get our job right? And then when we get the recreation going, some exercise going, you're going to find that it's like to live constantly filled up. And you could be your best self when you live up, when your bucket is on top and even overflowing onto others. Because then you're working for God. So I'm going to ask you, think about your bucket. Stay focused on it, that bucket. And I'm going to ask you to spend 2 or 3 minutes going through your own meditation, talk with God, talk with a trusted friend, a person or a friend. Tell them where you're at, what your bucket is reading right now, and be honest about it. Have a little conversation about it, and then maybe start that brainstorming session. What are some of the things that replenish the streams that ought to be in my life that aren't? How can I increase them? Name them. Tell which ones, and think you're going to begin to work on a little bit. So as you do this, I think the Holy Spirit will move in each one of us and replenish our buckets. And when we're done with your business, thinking about all this and talking with someone about it, I think you know how you can help someone else fill their buckets. Because it's to simplify our time when we feel overscheduled, simplify our stuff when we feel overwhelmed, and to simplify our life when we feel exhausted. Because depletion has to stop. Because filled to the top of your bucket is where you're supposed to be living. And it's where I'm supposed to be living. So let us pray. So now, God, in these next moments, we ponder and reflect where we are and how we got there. If some people are at the absolute bottom of their bucket, would they admit it? And would there be some kind of humility and that kind of drive, the stake in the ground? I'm done living on empty. I'm done staying in the depletion state. This is not who God wants me to be. This is not how I'm going to live my life in the future. to give people that resounding kind of conviction, to mark today as the day that ended. So this week, give people creativity on what could be replenishing them, what needs to start pouring life into them. Give us that sense of, yes, it is my responsibility. No one else can do this for me. This is what I need to do. This is my life. This is my future. Give people that sense of responsibility. And God, as we start filling back up this week, give us the sense that we're on the right path. We'll give you all the credit for you, because in Jesus' name we pray. Amen.